Well, Marjorie Taylor Greene has doubled down on her America should get a national divorce. We should break up along the lines of red states and blue states. And I have an interview for you where she talks about this. If you missed it, on Twitter, she tweeted out, "We need to have a national divorce. Our differences are too much," essentially. And now a lot of criticism came her way, as it should have, because she is putting forward a vile and bonkers idea. Vile and bonkers, that's kind of the story of Marjorie Greene's life. And she went on Charlie Kirk's show to talk about this, and she's still loving it. She's loving this idea, and she's added on to it. If this were to happen, and we'll talk about why she just does not understand whatsoever what even the hypothetical is that she's saying, that if blue state individual citizens moved to red state places, they would have to be there for 5 years before they would get to vote.
To a point where we really need to talk about solutions to this problem. We don't want a civil war. That's the last thing we want in our country. As a matter of fact, we want to be able to respect each other and get along, but we also need to do, to really look at major changes to fix our problems.
What does a national divorce look like in your estimation?
Well, a national divorce is not a civil war. It's actually separating by red states and blue states, and making state rights and state power a lot stronger than it is right now. It would be shrinking the federal government. For example, we can take education. Well, if we have a national divorce, there's no need for the department.
So what she is trying to do, and we'll watch so much more of this interview, but let me kind of walk through piece by piece. What she's trying to do is say, I'm not calling for a national divorce the same that you would picture a secession and two completely separate countries. I'm saying divorce red states from blue states so that the federal government's smaller, but we're still going to have the same military, is one of the things she says, and we're still technically a union. Number one, as we said in a past segment about this, I'm just going to take away all of my gushy statements, like the United States should be one country. All of us are Americans, and we need to figure out how we, with that assumption, move forward in a way that is cohesive and works. But just throw all that in the garbage for now. Just logistically, this would not work, because she's saying red states, blue states. If 99% of the population in red states were Republicans, maybe that becomes more of even a very hypothetical possibility, but that's not the case. You have states like Texas, where a massive portion of the population in all the cities are slanted towards the blue direction, and then much of the state's also Republican. And so how would you do that? Are you saying that, okay, now you're just a part of the new red version of the half of the country that was nationally divorced, but we're still kind of one union, but all of the things that people rely on, that the federal government does, because we're one country, that make sure all people are covered in different ways, those programs go away now because the red state part of the country can decide to do whatever they want. It's just very incoherent how this would logistically work, much less what I think is also a very against the spirit, the promise, the hope of America, and is provocative, because maybe she's saying it's not about a civil war, but when you tell people things are bad enough where the solution is us breaking up, some people may think worse things than you are justified. Continuing.
Department of Education, red states and blue states would be in control of the education in each state. Red states would very likely have traditional education, homeschooling, charter schools, private schools, technical schools. They would not allow any type of gender lies being taught in their schools. LGBTQ woke teachers would be fired and not allowed to teach there.
Did she just completely, and of course my camera here is freezing up. Let's see if it comes back on while I'm talking. Please hold. There we go. She just slipped and said LGBTQ woke teachers would not be allowed to teach. LGBTQ teach? What? Why is that in this? Are you just saying that, and this is honestly what I think they mean sometimes LGBTQ teachers in and of themselves are woke and thus need to be thrown out from the education process? That's disgusting.
They would allow parents to be able to choose the curriculum instead of school boards that don't respect parents' beliefs and traditional family values. And it maybe in blue states, they would have full gender transition schools for their students. I don't know what they would do, but I'm sure their education would look different than ours.
No, just to make sure I understand, are you arguing for separate nations?
No, not separate nations, not at all, because I believe in the United States of America and don't want to see that go away. I believe that we still need a strong United States military, but the Department of Defense should return to its original charter and intent. And it's supposed to.
Wait, I promise we'll watch more. So the red states and the blue states are divorcing. When you say national divorce, you're assuming becoming two separate countries, becoming two separate states, right? In the literal sense. And how then are you saying we have one military, we're a union, same nation, but the federal government can't meddle at all in the affairs of the red states, I guess is what you're saying? But then would you elect officials to the is there any national government other than the military? And let's say again, and then we'll watch more, another thing we went over in a past segment, and the reason why I sound so confused is because I'm genuinely confused about how she even pictures this going. But if you made even just a fully governed red state by the red, for the red, within the red, whatever, even if you did that, you would have a disastrous situation economically, in terms of crime, in terms of education. And we know that because look at the top 10 states as far as poverty goes in the United States. 9 out of 10 if you include DC, 10 out of 10 if you don't include DC are red states. Look at the top states for crime rates, disproportionately red states. Look at the top 10 worst education systems as far as states goes, disproportionately red states. This would be a disastrous country or part of the country that governs themselves if you didn't have the intervention of the woke ideology like Medicare and Social Security that, let's always remember, were the radical progressive ideas before they became something everyone agreed with, right? It was so radical that Medicare and Social Security were being put forward. It was so radical that Medicaid, that food stamp, all these different things are always socialism until they're not, until even Republicans don't want to speak out against them. And that's what the federal government in many cases, of course, I name some stuff that are, regulated by the states too, but in a general sense, these programs that are necessary federally that red states wouldn't have if it wasn't for the federal government are absolutely crucial to the lives of so many people. Even the ones who say, I wish I could live in just a red state governed by only red politicians, they don't actually, if they knew what that would mean, would want that. Continuing forward.
Its mission is to defend our borders and our national security. And, under what I'm talking about, that's what our Department of Defense would do. It wouldn't be more interested in fighting foreign wars and defending foreign countries' borders.
Yes.
It would defend the United States borders so that each state could exist how it chooses to exist.
And I don't disagree with what you're saying, but I don't think the left would ever stop. I don't think they'll ever stop trying to invade our states or our counties. So how do we?
It's not us invading your states. It's us invading our country. It's us voting in our country that I think you're just as much of a part of, and making decisions collectively that you happen to disagree with because more people in our country are not bought into the ideology that you are.
Stop them.
Well, I think that, red states could choose in how they allow people to vote in their states. For example, over the past couple of years, we've seen a mass exodus from California and New York. where we've seen people fleeing those leftist policies and moving to states like Florida, Georgia, Texas, states where they like the tax policies, they like the schools, they like the consequences of Republican and red policies. What I think would be something that some red states could propose is, well, okay, if Democrat voters choose to flee these blue states where they cannot tolerate the living conditions, they don't want their children taught these horrible things, and they really change their mind on the types of policies that they support, well, once they move to a red state, guess what? Maybe you don't get to vote for 5 years. You can live there, you can work there, but you don't get to bring your values that you basically created in the blue states you came.
Okay, so we're still one nation, but if you move within that nation, you might be disenfranchised for 5 years because your values don't align. Now, what it sounds like she's putting forward is this interesting plan, straight face, to have our federal government do things that only Marjorie Greene wants it to do, meaning the defense ambitions are only the ones that she would agree with, and the education leaves things to the states. But we would still be one country with one federal government. Yes, okay. So then I guess I would ask, do you think it should just be you deciding what things the federal government should or shouldn't do? No, not just me. I'm not wanting to be a dictator. Maybe she would say that. Okay, so she doesn't want to be a dictator. So then are you saying that the federal government, that you're one nation, one federal government, I know an interesting idea. It's too hard for individual people, all people, to decide day to day what the government does. But what if we had representatives in our federal government, and then we could all collectively choose who's in there? And maybe sometimes the person I like the most doesn't win, but those people then govern and decide federally what's happening. And if more people want a smaller government in states, and they don't want to support Ukraine, and they don't want woke education, then federally that decision will be made by representatives that are put in through a democratic process. Oh, wait, Ben, I know I'm being so annoying right now. I apologize, but it's too fun. We already have that. We have that already. And enough people have made the decision federally that we want the things that, with disagreements, to the point where we are now, and then we got to where we are now. And so in a democratic process, it doesn't go if too many people start siding with a set of policies that you don't like. You just create a separate part of the country that gets to do whatever they want. We're in a democratic country. You just keep losing because your ideas are bad. Try to get at better ways of explaining your ideas or pushing your policy positions, or don't keep hating people because of the way that they live, and don't keep trying to overthrow democratic processes by lying about the election. And maybe people will be on board with your ideas. Stop complaining about Jewish space lasers that you believe in, and maybe you'll start winning in the government in the country that we already have. We don't need two separate, partially connected ones, as she's putting forward there. Really bonkers stuff. We have a subreddit. Make sure to go check it out. If you want to talk about what the heck's going on with Marjorie Greene, you can do so there. And hit me with it, Ben, where they find that.
You can find that at The Luke Beasley Show.
The Luke Beasley Show on Reddit. That is our subreddit. Sometimes I get those two terms mixed up, but that's the reality, and it's beautiful, and I want you there.